Love it.
Hello, I'm JC and welcome to Arsenal Analysed. I hope everyone is doing dandy and well this evening after a fantastic Arsenal win against some club down the road. I'm sure you may have heard of them, not too sure. But tonight, in a special episode of Arsenal Analysed Live, I'm joined by three fantastic guests as we digest the game piece by piece, talking through all the hot topics and latest news relating to Arsenal. But without no further ado, let me introduce guest number one this evening. Tony, how are we doing, my friend?
I'm fantastic. I just saw what you put up there at the beginning of the show. That's classic too.
I
Love that.
I didn't see anything.
Oh, goodness.
I didn't see
sure
anything.
not. Yes, that would just be unprofessional, right? I suppose. Man, there's can you really say anything else? I mean, 3-1. That's it. That's all I got to say, and it's done.
That's all that matters. That is all that matters. Well, thank you very much for sparing some of your time this evening for myself and the guests to talk Arsenal. Up next, we've got Keith, co-host of the show. How are we doing, my friend?
Yeah, well, mate, you know, standard day. Not much has happened, really. Yeah, just been slow. Oh, there was some lunchtime was all right because we smashed the Swamp Dwellers 3-1. But other than that, yeah, I'm very, very happy this evening. I hope you are too.
I am. I've been smiling since about 12:30 onwards. You know, I don't know why, but yeah, been very, very happy, man, this afternoon, as all of us have been. And last but by no means least, Neil, how are we doing this evening, my friend?
I am just fine and dandy. I love the artwork, by the way. Top-notch stuff, Jake. Cheers, buddy.
Good. Well, before we get into the chat, we've got a comment coming in from John Jordan joining us in the chat. There's a few of you there now watching the channel, so really do appreciate you coming along, showing your support and getting involved in the chat this evening. Do get your questions in and join in along with all of the hot topics as well. We'll kick off with a nice easy question this evening. Coming to you first, Tony. Obviously, we're going to go through some sort of key moments of the game for those people that did watch. You'll obviously know what those key moments are. But sort of generally speaking, how happy were you with sort of today's performance, would you say, Tony?
It was solid. I mean, we really could not have asked for a better lineup to start the match with. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this is what we had to start with. Any other squad would have just not been acceptable. This is what we needed to do. The performance was perfect. Realistically, sure, there were just a couple of individual errors, but thankfully it wasn't anything that cost us too seriously, apart from, the one penalty, which we will not discuss yet. But all around, it was probably one of the best performances in a North London derby that I've ever seen. It was phenomenal, and the entire squad was just on point. The tactics were perfect, and Arteta got this one right. And I can safely say that I can drink this knowing what it is now, and I'm not going to die live on your show.
That's good. That's reassuring for the viewers that no one's going to have to hit 999 or 911 in your case. So, Keith, coming to you next. General thoughts on today's game, my friend?
Just to echo what Tony's just said, really, that is our strongest starting 11 that he put out. I wasn't expecting Zinchenko to go straight back in. But just from start to finish, bearing in mind that if we'd have lost today, they would have gone top. So it was essentially a top of the table clash. Mm-hmm. And even though they haven't played well, they've been grinding results out. And they've got very, very good at that. And defensively, they were set up, quite well. And they started to counter-attack us a little bit, especially after the first goal. And then when the penalty that should not be spoken of went in, we could have buckled and Gabriel could have buckled. And even though they perhaps finished the first half slightly stronger than we did, I was expecting them to come at us more in the second half and us to do what we've done in previous games where we just sit back for a little bit first 10 minutes and then counter-attack. But we went straight back at them in the second half And even without the sending off, I think the scoreline still probably would have been the same. The only thing I'm a bit pissed off about is that we didn't beat them by more, to be honest, because we were, I think, better than 3-1. Really,
I have to agree. Even before the sending off, there were chances, weren't there? Especially in that first sort of 30 minutes before Kane got his penalty. In that first 30 minutes, even before Partey got his goal, there were opportunities. There was that Granit Xhaka opportunity. Martinelli hit the post. Gabriel Jesus danced around 3 or 4 players, and that was all before Partey's goal. So absolutely spot on. And one of these days we'll get one of those crazy scorelines again, as we've seen in the past. Fingers crossed. Neil, finally with yourself, before we get into the nitty gritty and the finer details of the game, what were your general thoughts on today's performance?
I'll add to the goal. The abilities to score goals was, remember, Jesus had a clear header that he just went wide, and that's when he came down and he grabbed his ankle. I mean, these guys, these 2 beautiful gentlemen here, they covered it all so very well. The one surprise I had with the starting lineup, I have to say, was Ben White. I didn't expect Ben White to start. I expected Tomiyasu to start, to be more defensively minded setup. But, Ben White he stood out today. He did so well today. And, we went on to do a very good 3-1 victory, on both sides of the ball. We were very, very good.
Absolutely spot on. Very, very good from all players mentioned. And for those of you that haven't seen on Twitter yet, there's a video doing the rounds of Ben White walking off the pitch as he was substituted off, giving the old 3-1 with his fingers to the Spurs fans. Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, it's easily accessible online. It's about 30 seconds of your time. Well worth it. Go and have a look. But we're going to dive straight into things with the finer details of the game. We're going to speak about Thomas Partey, a player that when he joined Arsenal, injuries aside, he'd scored some pretty good goals for Atletico Madrid. And the first few that he scored for Arsenal haven't, shall we say, lived up to those standards, if you will. I think a lot of people were expecting, 30, 40-yard pole drivers from the guy. And Keith's even joked in various chats that we're in together about balls ending up in his back garden.
I got 7 official match balls in my back garden.
But today we were finally blessed with a fantastic clean strike from about 25 yards. It was 21 passes in total, actually. Before the ball hit the back of the net. And Keith made a great point before the game. Not before the game, during the game even. Saka had a lot to do in this goal. He picked the ball up out wide. He drew 2 or 3 opponents towards him, which not only created space for Ben White, which is where the ball ended up initially, before sitting at Partey's feet, but that was where the space was initially created. But a fantastic team goal. Coming to you first, Keith, because we spoke about it quite a bit before the game. What were your thoughts when this hit the back of the net?
Firstly, the foot he's taking it with, I always found that to be the hardest foot to take it with when the ball's coming across you, to take it with the nearest foot. Normally it's easy to let it come across your body a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he's instepped it a little bit. But it's just such a clean, crisp finish. And it's one of those, he would have known the moment that left his boot that was going in. And he probably didn't even feel it leave his boot. It was such a beautiful, clean finish. And, as you were saying just now, the part Saka played in that goal needs to be given recognition, because he'd done a couple of little step overs. And he had 2 players on him. And I remember seeing there was a third one just starting to come over just as he laid it off to Ben White. And it just shows the awareness that this young man has got, like way, way beyond his years. And he's had a slightly slow start to the season. But today, I don't remember even going past his man, but he cut inside quite a lot. But his awareness and knowing when to release the ball is way, way beyond his years. So that was, other than the purity of the actual strike, what Saka did, I think, deserves mention.
No, it does. And sometimes when a goal goes in of that quality, people sometimes forget, what happened in the build-up. Even the fact that there were 21 passes before that goal, the fact that Saka drew out 2 or 3 defenders in order to create the space to allow Partey to hit that shot. A lot of that does get forgotten when a ball is hit so clean from that distance in such a huge game. So yeah, absolutely valid points there made. Coming to you next, Tony, not with the same question, sticking with the same player. How important was it that Partey scored that goal when he did? Because prior to his finish, Arsenal had been in possession for most of the game. They'd built a lot of pressure. Arsenal had created 2 or 3 fairly decent opportunities to go ahead. So how important was it that Partey scored when he did for this fixture?
Yeah, let me just say that when that actually hit the back of the net, I think my head recoiled just as hard as the net actually did when it hit the back. It was pure power. It's one of those strikes. It was a beautiful strike, but honestly, I think it's once again he's proved to be that linchpin that we needed on both ends, and I am beyond glad that he was at the starting lineup with us. It was extremely important though, because we kind of had talked about this a little bit, and I had mentioned that the mid is going to be what's either going to make us or break us in this match, and that this was going to be extending beyond the 30 minutes because it was going to be a battle of continuity and persistence. It's basically a battle of attrition. So I think that Partey's goal came at the correct time to give us the momentum that we would have needed to continue. The other thing that's really helping us is the squad's mentality. We have such a different mentality than what we had 2 seasons ago, where we would have started capitulating right away if things weren't going our way. Yeah. Now, his goal assisted tremendously, but it was also to a point, knowing what we know now about Kane's penalty, coming up not that long after, it was sort of a cushion that kind of helped us to continue on and not start to sink in despair. So his goal was, not only was it beautiful, it was also very critical that we got it when we got it, because it helped us to maintain the confidence level and to not have that drop. So it was a perfect timing, I would say.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's spot on there. When you look back at last season, there are games that we've played against smaller teams. And, when we've been hit on the counter and conceded, like you said, we've capitulated and it's gone on to be, 2 or 3, unfortunately. But like you said, new mentality, which is fantastic to see. Neil, sticking with the same player, different questions slightly, by all means, comment on his strike because it was a fantastic one. But I think one thing, in my opinion at least, I don't know if the panel agrees, but when Thomas Partey plays for Arsenal, which isn't as often as we'd like due to his injury record, I think we can all agree that Arsenal play significantly better. What are your thoughts on the situation?
I think so. I think there's a there's a boost in confidence. There's also he's appeared to be like that safety net for the team in the midfield. So where there might be a misplaced pass or something of that nature, he's the one to break up the play in the middle of the park. He does not allow teams to really build that momentum going forward. So I think when he's a part of the starting lineup, every player around him, they have that confidence in going and stepping onto that pitch and executing a plan that's put out by the manager. Moving on to the strike, I think he was in his mind with a sheet of paper, a protractor, a compass, a pencil, and a ruler, and was literally mapping that out because that was one of those goals that nobody could stop. Not Gigi Buffon, no one. It was just perfectly placed into the top corner. It was outside of the post and back in. And that type of goal, you really can't stop. So, kudos to him. I'm really, really happy he scored a goal like that. And I hope it propels him into doing that more often. So yeah, man, it was just really, really good.
Good stuff. Yeah, no, we would love to see that a little bit more often from him as well. We only have to look at Granit Xhaka, who we'll speak about later on in today's show, how he's transformed as a player. to scoring so many goals now. I know that might not necessarily be Thomas Partey's role, but we all know that he's got a strike like that in his locker. I know today was the first time we've seen it, barring some headers that he scored for Arsenal in the past. But when he was at Atletico Madrid, he knew how to found the back of the net a couple of times a season with strikes like that. But coming to you next, Keith, another really, really kind of important moment in the game was the unfortunate giving away of a penalty from Gabriel. I think we can all agree that it was a penalty. It wasn't one of those decisions that needed to be reviewed by VAR. What I wanted to ask you, Keith, and also the rest of the panel is there have been 2 or 3 individual errors now from Gabriel this season alone. And whilst he's a very good defender, a very good ball-playing defender, there have been 2 or 3 individual errors now that have led to goals. My question to you is, in this particular scenario, what was he thinking initially? And, is this something that we should be concerned about moving forwards? Because we do have players like Saliba who have played at left centre-back for previous clubs. And Ben White could play where Saliba's playing and Tomiyasu at right-back. But as I said, taking nothing away from Gabriel, fantastic defender, great ball-playing defender, but one too many times this season already for me. What are your thoughts?
Firstly, talking about the penalty, there was no reason to make the tackle. And yeah, we all know it's a penalty. I'm sat there and it's against them lot. And I've not jumped up and screamed, he's dived or he's thrown himself on the ground. Knew straight away it was a penalty. And when you look at the visual there, you look at where William Saliba is, and Gabriel must have been able to see him there. There's no reason.
You think so?
The moment you go to ground, you leave yourself wide open to stuff like this. And yeah, probably Richarlison has seen him going down and he's made sure contact was made. But that's the nature of the game now. The moment a defender goes down, the chances are the striker's going to allow you to make contact, is the kindest thing I can say. And there was no reason for him to make that tackle. The bit before it angered me because we'd kind of got rid of the danger and then we tried to pass it back in again. It's like, it's one of those moments that even just put it out for a corner. Just get the ball out. That is not the time to be playing football, because it was pinballing around the box. And you could see something was going to happen. We were under the cosh a little bit. It's one of those, just if you can't get it into the channels or into, like, put it out to their corner, if you like, down the channels, just get the ball out. And that was what made me the most angry about that situation. But going back to Gabriel, I can't remember where I heard it. It might have been, you may well have said it last week when we were on. Gabriel last season, alongside Ben White, Gabriel was our senior defender, our best central defender. And now he is not our best central defender. William Saliba has quite quickly taken that mantle on himself. And we've spoken frequently about how well Saliba is playing. And it could well be that maybe he's feeling a little bit under pressure. But yeah, you're right. The mistake against Mitrovic that you mentioned earlier on in the show, there's that one, there's this one. He's just not looked as assured. I wouldn't go so far as to say, right, we need to drop him. But you're right what you say. Saliba's played left centre-back. Tomiyasu can play left centre-back. You could shift Saliba over and put Ben White in there and Tomiyasu right back. There's a lot of options, but it's something I think that needs to be watched. But from a personal point of view, we also need to bear in mind the guy's a new dad as well, and it could be that sleepless nights, they do have an effect.
We're all human.
Or not. So I just thought I'd throw that in there, but I've probably said enough. So, but yeah, it needs to be watched. He's not at the same standard he was last season so far.
Yeah, no, you do make a good point as well, and something that's only just come to mind now is that we've looked at players of the past who have had sort of like bad performances. I remember there was obviously Tavares a couple of times last season, Sambi also a couple of times last season as well, most notably against Liverpool. And Arteta has been someone to show faith in players as long as they've got the right attitude, mentality, and commitment. And maybe Gabriel is one of those characters. We don't always get to see what he's like in training, for example. And maybe Arteta is showing the faith, especially with all the options that you've just mentioned there, who can play in his position. If there was any concern or doubt in Arteta's mind, you would think, given how quickly Aubameyang was dropped, how quickly Tavares was dropped, that maybe a Gabriel would be in a similar sort of scenario. Coming to you next, Neil, same exact question, just kind of re-highlighting a couple of mistakes this season already, 8 games in. Is it something that we should be concerned about? What are your thoughts on the sort of the challenge for the penalty as well?
I think it was a clear penalty to Keith's point as well. Like, if you're clearing the ball, clear the ball. Don't put it back into the 18-yard box. That's not a place to play football. With regards to Gabriel and his performance so far for the season, I love Gabriel. I think he's a great defender. I think that, he possessed some really, really good stuff. However, it appears that his decision-making is it needs to be sharpened. And not even about the penalty, but while he's carrying the ball out, he stops before the half of the pitch, and he's there with the ball, and he's like this, and he's like this, and then he's like this, and he's looking to make a pass, but he can't seem to make the pass, and he holds on to the ball for a little bit too long. And we've seen previously that, one or two players might approach him, and he loses the ball, and they go into counter. Like maybe that's something has to do with, having a new baby, tiredness, his mental capacity is not as sharp as it normally is. So for me, it is a concern, because then the backroom staff needs to address that, find out what's going on, what's happening at that moment in time, what are you thinking about, so that they can address it.
No, good points made. Very, very good points made. Kind of very much aligned with what Keith said as well. There are things that, if there are things going on behind closed doors, you'd like to think they're being sort of spoken about and taken care of. So it's certainly one to keep an eye on. It's there.
They come the best,
Plain as day, isn't it? Plain as day to see that the mistakes are being made. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on. Tony, anything to add before we move on to the next question?
I had to take a shot just to try to get the PTSD out of my head first. Now, with that said, I think these two gentlemen basically covered it really, really good. The thing was, it was a rash tackle. And it's not that he was in a rush. He wasn't really in that much of a rush. The thing is, there was time to explore a couple of options before going around as fast as he did, and it's unfortunate that he did. And it did cost us. But for me, honestly, he's made similar mistakes like this in past matches. We know that. But what kind of bothered me somewhat wasn't so much just the mistake. It was also the fact that even after the error, it sort of got under his skin, and you could tell. He was making a couple of rash decisions, which I don't think he would have made had that initial tackle gone a different way. So that's kind of one of the things that concerns me really, is that it's the maturity level. How can you bounce back after a mistake like that? And it would be, don't let it get under your skin. Don't let it play mind games with you. It's rather just try your best, but don't let stuff like that sort of hamper you down. Apart from that, once he got over that spell, he performed well enough. He did what he was supposed to do. But that would be the one thing that concerns me. I don't necessarily see Arteta dropping him just yet, because he's had confidence and he's had faith in him in past matches. We know this because even after he's made previous mistakes, Arteta will still utilize him. So I don't particularly see him being replaced anytime soon, unless it becomes a real serious issue. And like the gentleman I've already mentioned, we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. It's true.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of mentioned it now. It's just one that we definitely need to keep an eye on. Fortunately today, and I'm not just saying this because I'm an Arsenal fan and we played against Spurs, but Spurs, the last few games, they haven't necessarily been at the races. I know they pummeled Leicester, but there were big question marks over certain performances in that game and the types of goals that they conceded. So, against different opposition, when you're kind of dwelling on those mistakes, as you mentioned, Tony, you could get punished quickly in quick succession sometimes. If it's against a Man City, for example, you've got a Haaland breathing down your neck. It can be a very, very different story. But moving on to the next question, I'm going to come straight back to you on this one, Tony. So far this season, highlighting this in my preview videos, sort of the times in which Arsenal tend to score goals during games. So including today's game, Arsenal have now scored 6 goals between the 15th and 30th minute in Premier League fixtures, as well as 5 goals between the 45th and 65th minute. Now, I think we can all agree that Arsenal dominated the first 30 minutes or so of today's game before allowing Spurs back in. But given those statistics that I've just mentioned, how important was it, Arsenal against 11 men at this point, how important was it that Jesus scored that goal when he did?
This is the goal that sort of breathed life again into the attack. Now, mind you, we were still relatively dominant in ball possession, not just in the first, but also in the second, which was fantastic. That's what we really needed to happen. But at the when Jesus finally managed to get his in, it was also one of the ones, like I said, it was essentially, we weren't quite flat at this particular time because we were still playing particularly well. We were still dominating the possession. But this is what we really needed to sort of give us the boost to carry on forward as much as we did. I think had we waited any longer than that, I don't necessarily think that Spurs would have gotten back into the match because they weren't particularly playing all that great today from what I was able to see. But Jesus's goal came at the perfect time for us because this is what we needed to sort of not just cushion ourselves against any more counterattacks, but to really press ourselves forward. And that's what we actually needed.
Yeah, I thought so too. And great comment coming in here as well, saying that we outplayed Spurs left and right. They didn't have a chance at all. And when you really kind of look at it and boil things down, apart from the penalty, they didn't really have too many chances, or even clear-cut chances for that matter, even if they were shots that were off target. Coming to you next, Neil, with the same question, something that Arsenal weren't necessarily that great at doing last season when we'd had maybe a particularly poor half or a mediocre first half.
Mm-hmm.
There'd been many chats that we'd had offline about, right, Arsenal need to come out flying now in the second half, and it just didn't happen. But today was very, very different, having conceded a goal just before the break. So how important was it that we scored when we did in that second half?
Just dialing the clock back just to when the goal happened before half. Usually, a previous Arsenal team that would have knocked the win out of us, and in the second half we would come out being very, very flat. But with this Arsenal team, it seems to have changed quite a bit. We have liftoff, and even with our previous number 9, you wouldn't see that type of follow-up, following the ball inside the 6-yard box. And let's not forget, who really made that happen, and that was Saka. He really built that ball in there that Lloris had to kind of fumble it, and thankfully, Jesus is that type of player that really is in there, and he's going to be a menace, and he's going to make sure and put if it's just a toe on it, he's going to make sure and do that.
Like he did against Villa, wasn't he? He was very much like Fox in the box-esque.
Very much so. So it's really good to see this type of mentality coming now out of the players, and you see it. They have that confidence in the way that they carry about themselves on the pitch, and the way that they carry the ball, and their passing and everything. So, I mean, it's a different Arsenal team altogether, man.
And Keith, anything to add on the topic of conversation before we move on to the next question? He's on mute as well.
I'm on mute. I just went, I'm on mute, aren't I? Daughter was playing piano, so I switched my mic off. Right. Nothing really further to add from what the guys have said. They've pretty much nailed everything, really. Other than say the timing was absolutely perfect. We did come out well, start of the second half, and it did, I think, turn the game. It kind of knocked the stuffing out of them. And then it wasn't, it wasn't a long time after we'd scored another and they'd had a player sent off, and then Conte, like there was one point he was going to put 5 players on at one time. The one thing, I'm going to paint a picture for everyone who hasn't seen your video from this afternoon. One of your slides, you showed a zoomed in picture of there's a flailing Hugo Lloris on the floor after he's parried the ball out. You've got 2 hapless Spurs defenders. I think it was probably Eric Dyer and perhaps Bentancur as well. They're on their heels. Granit Xhaka's a little bit on his heels, but he's not hapless, obviously, because he's a fantastic footballer. But you've got the flailing goalkeeper, the 2 hapless defenders, and you've got one Gabriel Jesus. And when you look at the body shape, he's leaning forward and he's chasing that ball in. And he will be chasing that ball in before the hapless flailing goalkeeper has even fumbled it. And then he went and fumbled it again. And I just thought the body shape of Jesus, look at that, look, he's still got it. Yeah, you can see there, he's just kind of hidden behind Granit Xhaka, and he's chasing that in just on the off chance that the hapless, pathetically useless goalkeeper is going to spill it to him. And he did. And then he spilled it again, actually, he fumbled it again after he'd already fumbled it, and then Jesus went and tapped it in.
It was good to see. Very, very good to see. And some very good points made as well, especially with regards to Jesus being in and around that area. That's what you want to see. It's exactly what you want to see. So, Keith, I'm going to come straight back to you on the next one as well, because this was a huge turning point in the game. Obviously, at 2-1 in a North London derby, an occasion as big as this is or was at the time. Next goal is huge, absolutely huge. And as if the game didn't need any more influence, this happened. Emerson Royale with a challenge, foul, attack, GBH, whatever you want to call it, on Martinelli. The thing that baffled me, and I know sort of in real time, speaking offline to quite a few different people, I thought it was going to be a yellow card initially. But what strikes me as bizarre is that Martinelli is heading back towards his own goal. He's already got enough pressure on him as it is, as we can see here from Højbjerg as well. I don't understand the need to make this type of challenge from behind, as high as it was. So, I suppose the question here is, number one, did you think it was a red card, and what do you think was going through his head when this challenge was made?
It's one of those, when you've played football and somebody's like literally almost going home, the phrase is stand him up, he's not going anywhere, just stand him up. And he was obviously going to be sending the ball back to whoever was behind him. I don't even know whether KT was on at that point or it would have been Gabriel. But Højbjerg is standing him up. What you'd expect from Emerson Royale was maybe to wait and chase the back pass in. But the way he's gone in on, that's just frustration, because Gabby has given him a torrid time all afternoon. That's purely born out of frustration. We're kind of conditioned as Gooners now to not expect to get the rub of the green off referees. And when I first saw it, I thought the same as you, that's a yellow. But when I saw it in the replay, and no disrespect to your framing skills, but that picture doesn't do it justice, because that's a secondary part of the action. He's actually got in higher than that, and he's got him quite a lot higher up the back of the shin. And it was a shocking tackle, and he deserved to go. And I thought it was quite telling that when he walked off, Conte did not even look at him. And that's all you need to know. It's a stupid, frustrated tackle. And he's, I'm not crying about it, because I think it's great that he's got sent off. But he's left his mates in shit, basically.
No, he really has, and that's why I mentioned it. It was an odd one, Martinelli in his own half, travelling back towards goal. Spurs under no real pressure. Martinelli playing down that left-hand side with Xhaka and Jesus all kind of interchanging throughout the game. Like you said, I think he was really frustrated. Yeah, they all had him on toast. He didn't know what to do with himself, did he? He was literally running around in circles at times. But yeah, in real time, it was an odd one because I know that they say that players from abroad like to roll around on the floor. And initially, because the camera was quite zoomed out at that particular part of the game.
I didn't think
I saw it. I saw him rolling around on the floor. His arm was in the air and everything, screaming. And I was like, have I missed something here? But it wasn't until the replays came up on the telly. And I was like, right, okay, yeah, I get it now. Nasty challenge. Neil, just before I come and ask you the same question, question coming in on the chat now. How many goals in all competitions for Jesus this season? He's only scored in the Premier League so far this season, although he has appeared in the Europa League. He scored 5 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League. I do expect him to feature in cup competitions, so that will change. Neil, your thoughts on the challenge, and do you think it was a red card, my friend?
Absolutely, 100%. That was a high boot. The studs were showing. It was just a ridiculous tackle. And on top of that, we're going back towards our goal. Like, why make that type of tackle? And it's your countryman as well. Like, come on, man. Like, you're trying to break his shin?
Yeah.
But think about it. The tackle was a poor tackle. And then, Anthony Taylor just had to remind him that, London is red. So
love that.
So it was a poor tackle. And to give it even more further justification, the fact that Conte was just like, don't even look at me, like when he was going into the tunnel, it gives that further justification that it was just an outplaced tackle. It was just a poor tackle. Should have never happened. And, he got what he deserved.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Tony, I'm looking forward to your answer. You've always got something colourful to say on the matter.
Believe me, at the rate that I'm going through this, I'm going to finish it in December. So yeah, that's about right. No, honestly, I was shocked in 2 different ways. Number one, I was shocked at the tackle itself. I personally really think that there was a need for him to tackle the way that he did. And I think the second shock to me, honestly, was the fact that, holy crap, we actually got a red card instead of something else, because I was expecting that just to be treated as a yellow. I didn't really see the severity of it until I started seeing the replays. And even when I looked, the first replay that we got over here, because I'm watching it on the USA Network, it showed from the rear, and it didn't look like it was very high. You could only just see the tip of his foot. So for me, it was like it's probably a yellow card. Then when the ref actually bought a red card, I'm like, whoa, okay, that must have been more severe. And then they showed a different angle, and that's where you seen how high it was. The tackle itself, it was a tackle, I think, anyways, that was born out of frustration, because he wasn't really attempting to go for the ball. It was more, I'm not going to say that it was a purely malicious intent behind it.
Yeah.
But there was definitely,
I'll say it was malicious. No, it was malicious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for me, initially I thought that it was just a yellow until I actually saw and got a good enough look at the replay, and I was like, yeah, that's more of a red card offense because of the style of the tackle itself. It was more of a violent tackle than anything else, really.
Yeah, no, you are right. And the replays, honestly, they saved it. I say they saved the day. It's more for us viewers that are not there. But like even up until the point where the red card came out, we hadn't seen a replay at that point, and I was still like, "What's going on here?" I honestly, I was so shocked, and I was half expecting. And this was obviously all before the replays came on the telly. I was half expecting, VAR to get involved, and then the decision to be overturned. But yeah, it was a bizarre one, and I think all of you guys have touched on it as well. There's been so many occasions in the past where we've either been on the receiving end. Mm-hmm. Or we're the team dealing it, and decisions have not gone in our favour. So it was nice to see a decision go in our favour for once. Comment coming in here saying 50-50 the red card for me, to be fair. Seen them not given, absolutely spot on. I've seen them not given before as well. But hey, it is what it is, and fortunately we managed to benefit from it. And speaking of decisions, a big talking point on this channel this season, last season, all football channels on YouTube, not just Arsenal related, any form of social media is referees and VAR. Now, Neil, I know you've been someone strongly opinionated on this particular matter since we launched Arsenal Analysed Live. Mm-hmm. But credit where credit's due. The officiating in what was a very big game today wasn't terrible. Normally in these games, the officiating does unfortunately tend to dominate. They want to take the headlines. But there were two big key decisions today that we've already spoken about, in the penalty, which was the right decision, and the red card, which was also the right decision. But what did you make of the officiating today, and should they be due some credit?
I see today as well. I'll tip my hat to Anthony Taylor. I think he did a good job. He allowed things to happen. He allowed a little bit of rough and tumble sometimes. For me, that when Kane kind of tried to take the ball from Gabriel, this is what's towards the end of the game, he kind of kicked him in his back when he was already down on the floor. I did see that. You know, he carried so-called carry out with the momentum that he was going with. He allowed stuff like that to happen, which enriches the North London derby. You want to see that type of dirty play sometimes because it causes a bit of reaction, but also he really did well in terms of managing the game during the 90 minutes. So I'll give them a little bit of kudos today. Also, I would say that I was very surprised that VAR did not intervene in that red card. I was super surprised. I was like, oh God, VAR is going to come in here now and they're going to just take this away, because it's probably not a red card offense. To the comment coming in from, I don't want to destroy your name, so that person that just mentioned the 50-50 on the red, we've seen thousands and thousands of tackles like that and never given, sometimes even a yellow, you know. Yeah. So, you know, it's good to see Anthony Taylor tightening up things. I guess it's due depending on the type of game. You know, they hold back or they overdo sometimes in some cases.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things, isn't it? You know, for the amount of stick they get, you know, they need to have the odd decent performance in there every so often. Keith, was that a concern of yours in such a big game early on in the season that maybe the officiating was going to dominate? And were you impressed today for a change?
Do you know what? For the last year, like on social media, particularly on Twitter, people will mention who the referee is and then they'll talk about their past history. I don't pay any attention to who the referee is anymore because I kind of expect it to be against us. And when there was it was probably about 20 minutes in, Martin Keown on commentary said Jared Gillett's had nothing to do on VAR. And whenever I hear that name, Jared Gillett and VAR, oh man, seriously. And I've got to say, when Gabriel Jesus got our second, I didn't celebrate straight away because it wasn't clear cut. Like our first goal was clear cut. You knew it was a goal. There was nothing they could do us on for that. But with that one, I was expecting a foul to be given. And I've got to say, I was really happy with Anthony Taylor's performance today. Same as Neil's just said. He let the game flow as much as he could. In fact, there were a couple of times when he let one foul go, and then I think he gave another one for them lot, which was nowhere near as bad as the first one. Yeah. And I thought, when you don't notice the referee and the officials, they're doing things right. And I didn't really notice him today. There were a couple of times where he's made the right decision. Like you said earlier, Jake, the penalty call was right. And the red card was right. They were the only things he had to really sort out. It was, from the point of view of physical aspects or physicality, it was actually quite a tame North London derby. And
actually.
There was a moment when Harry Kane went in on Gabriel, and that should have at least been a yellow. But I'm fairly certain if it had been him that had tackled Gabriel Martinelli, it wouldn't have been a red. That's just how it goes with Harry Kane.
Yeah, I think he is protected as an English player, as captain of the national team, he has seemed to get away with it at times, not just against Arsenal, just generally speaking across the Premier League. Another comment coming in here before I come to you, Tony, and your thoughts with regards to officiating VAR, not only in today's game, but generally speaking. But there were a few tasty tackles on Jesus today. Not sure which one specifically that you're referring to. Please do let us know in the comments. And Neil, you look like you know what's going on here.
I have it. So just before when Jesus missed the header, right?
Yeah.
And then he went down and he grabbed his ankle.
Yes.
The tackle leading up to that grab of ankle, it wasn't so much, I think it was Bentancur. It wasn't so much him, but more Eric Dyer, because when I looked at the replay, Eric Dyer actually stepped on his, that would be his left foot, close towards his ankle. I saw that, I was like, I'm hoping Vieira is going to look at this, but they didn't. But I think that's what, and he can confirm, or she can confirm, I'm sorry, if that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, let us know if that's the incident that you're referring to, or if there was another, because, you know, in this game, as there has been in other games as well, like Jesus is in and amongst it, several battles throughout the game. Tony, just to kind of finish off on that question before we move on to the next, any thoughts on how impressed you were with the officiating today for a change?
Officiating and VAR. It's not football. It's not football. It's not football anymore. No, honestly, I'm not. I can't really. Realistically, I actually didn't really even think about the officiating for this particular match, which is weird because it was on my mind constantly against our match against Manchester United. But I think that one is because I figured out that two of the officials were from Manchester. So, but for this one, it didn't really cross my mind that particularly much. With that said, I can't really complain about the officiating during this match. It was what you would expect officiating in the Premier League should actually be, as opposed to what it often is. Yeah. I think in the first half, it seemed like he was a little bit hesitant about giving out cards of any color. That kind of changed for me, though, at least from what I could see during the second half. There he started cards a little bit more easily, which is fine. It's a North London derby. This is kind of what it should be. We're expecting, some dirty, nasty, stinky, disgusting, beautiful football. And that's kind of what we got with that one there.
No, absolutely spot on. And you've agreed with Keith. It's one of those, and Keith, you hit the nail on the head. When you don't know about the officiating and it's just kind of getting on with his job and you don't have to talk about it and you don't have to think about it. That's what you want every week in the Premier League. That's how it should be. But no doubt, this is not the last time that we're going to speak about VAR and officiating this season on Arsenal Analysed. I'm pretty confident there will be a topic of conversation next weekend, whether it's Arsenal related or not. I'm damn right sure that there'll be more VAR conversations over the next few weeks. Hopefully Arsenal aren't involved for a change. Moving on to the next question. Two players that I want to speak about in this particular section before we move towards the end of today's live show. And Keith, I'm going to come straight back to you on this one because I know he's a player that you're really impressed with, a player that you've been very, very, very happy with so far this season. A few people were wondering whether or not he would be coming straight into the first team off the back of a couple of loans. And that is William Saliba, who's been absolutely fantastic since coming in this season. Definitely the best of the two centre-backs so far. Lovely little stat there on screen for everyone to digest as well. But just wanted to grab your thoughts on not only his performance today, I thought he was exceptional, but the impact he's had. Obviously confidence only lasts you so long, but I think it's beyond that now, isn't it?
He's another one. He's beyond his years. I've said before about his footballing IQ. What is he, 21? And I thought we'd lost him last season, to be honest. I thought he was probably going to end up signing the deal and staying in France.
Yeah.
But this kid has got everything. It's like he's quick. He's strong. I was interested to see if they broke today and either Richarlison or Son, how he would compare pace-wise with them. Because the only one I've seen outpace him this season has been Rashford.
Yeah.
And that concerned me a little bit. But he's quick, he's strong, he's big, but he's so calm. There were a couple of times today. It's like I was thinking, just hoof it, get it out. He's so calm, and he seems to play the right pass every single time. There were a couple of times early on, Ben White put him in the smelly stuff, and he found his way out of it. And I don't think, and I know I'm biased and I've got my Arsenal tinted glasses on here, I've not seen a better centre-back this season. I was looking at some stats, like everyone goes, like Van Dijk is widely renowned as the best centre-back in the league. His stats destroy Van Dijk this season. All right, Van Dijk's perhaps getting old, but I don't think there's a better central defender in the league at the moment than this kid, and he's 21 years old. Our biggest problem is keeping hold of him.
Yeah, he's got 2 years left on his contract now. There are rumours we spoke about in the last live show, if you remember. Those rumours with regards to his contract being signed, but you are right. His performance today was absolutely exceptional. You have to look at those stats there in the heat map. Coming to you then, Neil. What were your thoughts on his performance today?
Let me just sum this up. I think this would sum it up how I feel about his performance, and since he came into the first 11 after being on loan a couple of seasons. If between, how should I say this? If Saka leaves, and then versus William Saliba.
We spoke about this, didn't we, last week?
Yeah, it would break my heart even more that if William Saliba leaves this Arsenal team, because I feel like as good as Saka is, at the age that William Saliba is, he brings so much more to the team than a player like Saka. And this is not a measuring competition or whatever. Like just because we've seen what Saka has done for this team. He carried the team for a couple of seasons and all of that. But William Saliba has come to this team and played what is this was match game 7?
8, I think.
8 games. 8 games. And look at what he's done so far. So as to Keith's point, his composure on the ball. At one point, there were 3 Tottenham players around him in the 18-yard box, and he carried the ball out. I'm not sure if you guys can recall that, but I'll see if I can find the clip. That type of composure and confidence is what we need in this back line. And as they always say, forwards win you games, defenses win you titles, and he needs to stay in this Arsenal team.
He's been exceptional. He's been absolutely exceptional. Anything to add, Tony? Because there is another player that I want to speak about. So quick few thoughts on this one, and I'm going to come straight back to you on the final player.
Yeah, it's Saliba is going to be a player that we are going to need to have in our starting lineup as often as possible. The way that he remained so calm today and composed, and the way that he was able basically to pocket both Son and Richarlison was very impressive. It's his power, his speed, the strength that he has. It's top notch. And really, ever since he returned to the Premier League back to Arsenal, you can see the improvements as a player that he's been making. And I'm expecting him to just continue to improve and to get better with more experience under Arteta's system.
Yeah, for a player as young as he is, it's clear to see the improvements that other players have had under Arteta so far. And with this being his first season under Arteta, it's exciting to see where this relationship may go. I just hope, please, Jesus Christ, get a bloody contract signed along with the other 2 so that we can actually see the potential that this kid has, because it is absolutely exceptional. And it's been a while since we've had a superstar Frenchman in the team as well. Of old, we've had a few to name. But moving on to the next player that I want to speak about, Granit Xhaka. Me, Keith, and Neil spoke about him last week. A bit of a redemption story, if you will. We've all had really strong opinions on the guy for good or bad reasons. But it's clear to see, especially over the last 2 games, just how good he's been, how important he is to this Arteta system. I just wanted to grab your thoughts, Tony, and I'll ask the other guys as well. You know, how good he's been for Arsenal this season in a new role, and how good he was today.
For me, honestly, I think he had about an 8 to an 8.5 performance. I mean, it was his partnership with Partey was just, it's fantastic to see how dominant they were in the mid today. Not just that, and it's the relentlessness with which he was able to create the chances for the other players, and not only the goal himself that he scored. It's great to see it, and it's the thing with me is I used to sort of be someone that would criticize him because of the lack of consistency in the performances and because of some of the rash decisions that he had made, which cost us. But I'm starting to see now that there's a very solid consistency to the performances that he's putting out on the pitch every single time that he's playing. And it's really spectacular to see him sort of flourishing. And I had mentioned this before, but I'm going to kind of mention it again. Sometimes it just takes the right manager to bring in the correct abilities in a player. And I think this is what Arteta has been doing for Xhaka, because we're starting to see it now a lot. So kudos to Xhaka, man. He's spectacular.
Neil, what are your thoughts?
I agree 100% with Tony. I think it took Mikel Arteta to understand Granit Xhaka and the role that he should be playing in the team, and where he should be playing on the pitch. I looked at him today and I thought that he was clearly the man of the match. He displayed not just footballing ability, footballing IQ, but also leadership on the pitch. When that first goal went in, it was his duty to call the players around and say, "Listen, guys, don't get in, don't just lose this. Stick together. Let's carry on because we just started." And those things, to me, seems that is what Mikel Arteta saw, and he wants he wants to see Granit Xhaka maybe win something at Arsenal other than an FA Cup. They want, he probably want to see Granit Xhaka really turn his story around and carry on to win a major title. So let's hope that that's what is going to happen. And I have to say that with his consistency that he's shown this season, I'm really, really happy. I never thought I would be saying this about Granit Xhaka, but if I don't see Granit Xhaka in the team, I'm a little bit worried. I would be a little bit worried.
It's funny because I never thought I'd be saying it myself. And Keith, I'm going to ask your opinion on this in a minute as well, because me and Keith, before the season started, I wouldn't say arguing, but we would often debate about, I want Tielemans to replace Xhaka, and Keith wanted Neves to replace Xhaka. But ultimately, we both wanted him to be replaced, regardless of whether it was Tielemans or Neves coming in that position. Exactly that. But I've been strongly opinionated on Xhaka for good or bad. Keith, what are your thoughts?
I think he's better. You could put Tielemans and Neves, like you could blend them together, and I think he's better than both of them at the moment. So we were both wrong, really, Jake.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go back to the Crystal Palace game, it's like, I was angry when he threw the armband down. We understand what that means, and the guys who have gone before him and what that means to the club. But I felt a huge amount of sympathy for him after the event when I found out the things that have been said about his missus and his kid on social media. And at the end of the day, he's a human being. But then you fast forward to some of the dumb shit that he's done, like the sending off against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup last season. That was a low point for me. I was like, what are you even thinking, making a challenge like that? And that was what I couldn't get past, was like, I'm not sure if he still is, but at the time he was the captain of the Swiss national team. He's an experienced international footballer who's played at the highest level for a long, long time. And he can't keep making mistakes like that. Excuse me. But then you think he's played under 4 Arsenal managers, if you include Freddie Ljungberg, Arsene Wenger, Unai Emery, Freddie Ljungberg, and now Mikel Arteta, who was up for the job when Unai Emery got it. and he's the first one to see the right role for this bloke. Everyone else played him as a holding midfielder. I don't know whether it's because he's slow, but he's not a holding midfielder. We're seeing that now. When he's got the freedom to go forward and express himself, the one thing I would like to say is when Partey went off, it seemed to sap a little bit of his confidence. He's got that confidence when he's got Partey behind him that he knows he can go. Whereas when Partey come off, it's almost like, and this is not a bad thing, as a senior professional, it's almost like he felt like he had to be there to look out for Sambi when he came on, which is great. And I love that because I've been in the situation myself when you're a young player and you've got older players who aren't looking out for you. That's what you need. But I've been a little bit blown away with him, to be honest. And
same.
What was he? 28. So he's still got years in him. But the point that Tony and Neil both made about him, absolutely spot on. Could not agree more.
Yeah, it's one to keep an eye on because, you know, prior to this new form and position that he's taken up this season, it was clear to see that, if you believe rumours, that is, that Arsenal were in the market for a new number 8, if you want to call it that, to play on that left side. So it's going to be one to keep an eye on. I don't think Arsenal will be in the market for one in January, but certainly in the summer period, especially with the lack of options that we've got in midfield now, but that's mainly due to injuries. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Now, I'm going to throw a load of facts at you guys. We've got 2 questions left before we finish up. But last season, it took Arsenal 16 games to score 20 Premier League goals. This season, it's taken Arsenal just 8 games to reach the same tally. Now, last season, I think it's fair to say that we would have lost to teams like Brentford and Fulham, especially when conceding first, or such a silly goal like we have done this season. Arsenal have also struggled against the so-called bigger teams in the Premier League. But this year, it all seems as though it has improved. Keith, coming to you first, a bit of a loaded question, sort of 2 or 3 questions in one. But what I wanted to ask you, and I know it's still early doors. I know it's still early doors in the season, but I just wanted to ask you, sort of, how happy are you with this new and improved Arsenal, if you want to call it that? You know, what's changed for you with this Arsenal team, in your opinion, and what is the sort of next logical step? Because at the beginning of the season, most Arsenal fans would have said top 4, but I'm seeing former Gooners and pundits now saying that Arsenal should be looking at a title challenge. So, bit of a loaded question. Just wanted to catch your thoughts on the above.
Very good questions. I think if you look back a couple of years ago, I think Mikel Arteta is very, very lucky that there was a lockdown in this country when we went through that awful spell, because I think the noises that the fans would have been making probably would have cost him his job. Now, I'm really thankful that the stadiums were closed now, because I've had moments where I've wavered, like the first leg against Villarreal when he decided to go false 9 for the first time. I was like, mate, what are you doing? Ridiculous. Yeah, that was naivety. He's growing into the role now, as is Edu. And the 3 big differences for me this season have been Saliba, Zinchenko, and Gabriel Jesus, because we've now got a real strong central defender. We've got a real strong left back who quite often goes inverted and could easily sit into Xhaka's role. I've said on your tweet earlier, I expected him to be on the bench to come in case Xhaka got involved in anything stupid. But then you look at Gabriel Jesus, like when Aubameyang was playing well for about the first 6 months, really quick, outstanding goal scorer, and he was pressing everything. Then you had somebody, God, I can't remember his name now, Lacazette, sorry. And he had the work rate, but not the pace. And now you've got Gabriel Jesus, who is scoring and assisting, and his work rate, I cannot get over the guy's work rate. You see him somewhere, and it's different, obviously, when you're watching on the telly as opposed to being on the pitch or being at the ground. But then all of a sudden, he's somewhere else, and he does not stop. And he's at the point now where his confidence within the team and his role within the hierarchy of that team is such now that when he's pressing, I saw him earlier today, he's going like that, he's going like that. He's urging other people to press with him because obviously there's no point one person pressing.
Yeah.
But the three of those, I think, have made a big difference. And obviously the younger players who've been there a while, they're growing into it. And I was thinking this earlier, it's like, could we actually push for a title? I don't think we can. We're not quite there yet.
I'm on the same page with you on that one.
Man City, I don't see anybody, look at who they've got up front on top of everyone else they've got. I don't see anyone pushing them. But where I said at the start of the season I wanted us to be top four, I think top four is an absolute minimum now. This side, if you'd have said to me at the start of the season, 8 games in, and we've got to play Man U and Spurs, and we'll have won 7 of those 8 games, I wouldn't have took that bet.
No, I wouldn't have done either, especially with our form at the back end of last season, regardless of who we signed.
It's not just the results, though. It's how we've played and how we've conducted ourselves and how we've dealt with difficult situations. Like today, as Tony said earlier, we could easily have capitulated when, the Crayon geezer scored his penalty. We could have fallen apart very easily, but we didn't. And there's something different about us this season. And it's almost like they've grown up a lot and it's starting to gel. It's not where it needs to be top end, but it's definitely in the right direction. Sorry, I went off on one there.
No, you're absolutely right in what you said. It's what it's all about. I want to hear how Arsenal fans are feeling with this sort of thing. I want to understand where people think that we're improving or not so much. And with regards, just to be clear, your opinion is that top four is the main aim. We're not to get carried away and start thinking that we're on some sort of title push or rush.
If we're in this position in April, ask me again. But at the moment, no, top four. Top four is still progress.
Yeah. Especially with the month that we have ahead as well. We've got 8 more fixtures this month, and then we've got the World Cup. So there's a lot that can happen. Tony, same question. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's Captain Crayola, by the way, Keith. Just so you'll know for the next one.
So my bad. I remember that next one. So.
Realistically, Keith just really, if that thing would have been a nail, he just hammered it right on the head. It was perfect. Truthfully, is mind you, at the beginning of the season and from the ending of last season, I had said that for this particular season, Arsenal's number one goal should be trying to go for top 4. Now, the reason that I really was because we also now have the Europa League, which we're going to be playing games in. And the one thing that concerns me about that many games in one season is the one thing that concerns me every season: injuries. We can never avoid injuries. It's like a plague. No matter what's going to happen, somebody's going to wind up, pulling hamstring or losing an arm or something. That said, I have also mentioned this point before, and the reason that I have so much faith in this squad as they are, not just in the manager too, it is we have such a different culture and mentality in the club right now. It is a 180-degree turn from where we were. I've never seen an Arsenal side like this, and I don't have the experience that you gentlemen do. You guys are hard veterans over here. I'm not, so I've never seen an Arsenal squad with the passion and the iron mentality that I'm seeing right now. So this is something exciting to see. Am I pleased? Yes, absolutely. Would I have guessed that we were going to be top of the league for as long as we have it? Hell no, not in 1,000 years. I would never have guessed. But here we are. Now, being realistic, as much of an optimist as I am, I cannot see us maintaining our physical health level with the players all the way to the very end, because I'm sure somewhere along the way we're going to wind up having a flat tire. I mean, it's already sort of happened. But 100% are we going to be in the top 4? Yeah, that isn't even a question in my mind, unless something really bad happens along the way. But I 100% am happy with the squad as they are, and I could see exciting things happening in the future.
Next season is the one for me. That's where it gets really, really interesting, depending on who we sign in January and the summer. For some of the reasons that you just mentioned there with regards to, the squad's depth. Because one thing that I'm really interested in seeing now, because we've got Liverpool next in the Premier League, but in between now and then we've got a Europa League game. And whilst most of the positions in the squad have got a second, if you want to call it that, we don't have two secondary defenders. We don't have a sort of backup left winger at the moment because Smith Rowe's injured. We don't have a backup to Granit Xhaka, depending on whether or not Sambi plays in Xhaka's position or Partey's position. So rotation over the next 4 weeks is going to be really, really, really key. And then Neil, what are your thoughts on the matter?
Could you just repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we were looking at is how much Arsenal have improved compared to sort of last season. For example, we've scored 20 goals in 8 games compared to 16 games last season. And I was just asking the guys, what's changed in your opinion and what's the logical next step? Because some Arsenal fans, or should I say most Arsenal fans, are still saying top 4. They're not getting carried away. Whereas former players of the club, as well as pundits, are saying that Arsenal are in a position now where they could be challenging for the title.
And you guys can tell from that side how much. No, I would like for that to be true. I really would. And to be quite honest, as things stand right now, the only team that is gonna probably compete with the likes of Manchester City is Arsenal. That's as of right now. But there are a lot of things that can stop that from happening. And to Tony's point, is this sustainable? Is our team sustainable to carry out the 38 games of the Premier League season? No, because there are other leagues involved. There's the FA Cup, there's the Carabao Cup, there's the Europa League for however long we decide to stay in that. How Mikel Arteta decides to prioritize what's more important. Which of the 4 realms of football is most important to the team, and what do we need right now the most? So there's a lot of things to happen. Do I feel like we have a chance at a top 4 every season? I say yes. It doesn't matter how we're playing. We are the Arsenal. So top 4 is definitely the minimum for us. The pinnacle is obviously to lift that Premier League trophy. If we go on to do so this season, I'm not going to be too surprised. And let me tell you why. For all the things that I've said before, the mentality of the team, the confidence of the team, what Mikel Arteta is now doing with his team, the Granit Xhaka turnaround, like all these things are evidence to what's been going on in the background. And I don't want to go on too much longer, but if January comes around and we go in and we purchase a midfielder and maybe an attacking type player, I agree with Keith. Ask me in April. I think we'll be in the conversation about title contenders for sure.
Okay. No, well, I'm glad I asked the question because I've seen a lot of talk about it online, and I just wanted to see if anyone had yet got carried away with the hype. But I think we've all been Arsenal fans long enough to not allow that to happen. So just to finish up today's show, there is a quick little something that I wanted to look at today, which I thought was quite funny. So we've got our main man here, Ian Wright, doing his little dance. Yeah, we know he loves his North London derbies as well, but this is the one that made me laugh the most. Yes! He's going to be starting match of the day. Match of the day shortly.
I wonder if is he trying to get the job for Gonosaurus?
Potentially, he'd get it hands down. But the one tweet that made me laugh the most, I'm not too sure if you guys have seen it, is this one. Good old Richard Keys getting involved yet again.
On that.
It
I
just
jumped right into it.
Yeah, it just made me laugh so much that we at least to him, we're allowed to celebrate. We're allowed to
decent of him to say that, like he's that important.
He's that important that we've given the go ahead.
We've got the green light, guys. Let's celebrate.
The green light. As fans, as professionals of the club, whatever association you have to Arsenal, it is safe to celebrate. Okay, so for anyone watching, if you were wondering, you're allowed to smile about today. So that is going to about wrap things up.
Tottenham get battered everywhere they go. Tottenham get battered everywhere they go. Everywhere they go. All right, there you go. Celebration police.
Tony,
go ahead and stop that.
You need to sing more, by the way. I want to hear more singing from you. If I could just jump in quickly, what we're saying about the improvements. Everyone's heard about Arteta wanted this connect between the team and the fans that had been lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I first noticed this when we weirdly beat them not 3-1 at home last season. And the noise levels were mad. And obviously when we were at the Everton game, last game of the season, the atmosphere is great. It's still not, I still wouldn't say it's as good as it was at Highbury in pomp. But the noise that I heard today, the last time I heard it that loud was when Wrighty broke the record against Bolton and the noise levels just went through the roof. And that's making a huge, huge difference. It's becoming a fortress like it should have been so many years ago. And it's not been that yet. And I think credit needs to go to Arteta and his team as well, because that was one of the first things they wanted to build, was to get this mentality and this connect back. And it's getting there, and it's impressive.
We saw it like you said. We saw it last season, didn't we? Especially with the fortress type form at home. We saw elements of that last season, but the atmosphere, like you said, from last season onward, it's been absolutely phenomenal, and it's just been built upon and built upon and built upon. So that's going to be key this season if we want to push on. But that is going to about wrap things up for today's special episode of Arsenal Analysed. North London is red. Tony, if the people want to have a chat with you about Arsenal and have a look at your disgusting Arsenal shirt collection, he's obsessed. He's got an addiction. Where can they find you?
This collection.
Oh, man. I got it bad, dude. It's like straight to the veins. That's where all the shirts go, man. You can find me on Twitter. It's under Judge Dredd, the law. Massive thank you to Clegg, man. I really do appreciate the chance to come back, and it really is an absolute honor, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be subscribed to your channel and to see the absolutely spectacular work that you've done. I mean, if anyone has been following Clegg long enough, you know that this man, I literally think, is a Terminator from the future sent back to the past, because his mind when it comes to all things Arsenal, it's ridiculous. And the passion that he's got along with all these other gentlemen here is it's spectacular. So definitely keep checking out his channel. Also, Keith, what you're doing with Land Aid, it's really a very honorable cause that you're doing. And if anybody in the UK out there or anywhere else in the world, if they want to donate to that and to see what they're doing, it's spectacular, because it's homelessness, especially among youths. I haven't been through it, but I have friends who have been through that situation, and it's horrific. It really is sad. So thank you, Keith, for doing what you're doing with that as well. And Neil, I mean, come on, man, we just survived the hurricane together.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I can't wait to get you back on again. Neil, where can the people find you, my friend?
You can find me at Tottenham Hotspurs Socks, or at Swamp Dwellers. I'm just joking. But to just before you guys, where you could find me, what Tony just spoke about what Keith is doing. Like you would look for people. And I'm so sorry, Jake, I don't want to take up too much of this time, but what Keith is doing...
You're more than welcome.
No, what Keith is doing about bringing awareness to to homeless people, and like the walks that Keats do. He goes out, he spends the night on the street. Like this is serious, and this is not just probably in the UK, but it's all over the world. There's a lot of kids out there that are experiencing a lot of unfortunate things, and for someone like Keith who goes out and puts themselves out there and try to bring a platform of awareness to what's been happening, hats off to you, sir. You're gonna be you have to be recognized for it. So people, go on Keith's Twitter page. I'm sure you're gonna find a link there that you can go ahead and donate. Is that right, Keith?
Absolutely right. Yeah. Thank you very much, chaps.
Yeah. In terms of me, you can find me on Twitter at Neil Dwarka, on Instagram, Neil Dwarka the Realtor, same as Facebook, and BenchWarmerz podcast on YouTube. Jake, as always, pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. And by no means not least but last, Keith, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Well, as always, thank you very much for inviting me back. It's mad that you keep inviting me back. I'm just like, he's got to suss it out sooner or later. But no, anyone that's watching, make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel. I'm trying to get the angle, this channel, because what Jake's done over the last couple of years I've known him has been absolutely immense, and he deserves all the credit that he gets, and he's going places. Also, I'd like to thank, there we go, get the angles right, that bloke and that bloke, and all of them as well.
Way in that direction, no, the other direction. I'm doing it now.
But they're really, really good guys, and thanks for mentioning the land aid stuff and the homelessness issues. I'm not going to plug any of my own stuff actually off the back of that, but you can find me on Twitter as the Mad Rambling One, and there is links if you want to make a donation. I'm spending the next 14 days walking as far as I can to raise as much money as I can for young homeless people, and as much as £5 will keep one of them off the street for a night. So that kind of puts things into context when we've got our first world problems and all that. But yeah, that's it. But thanks again, Jake. Appreciate the continued support and the continued invite backs.
Always a pleasure. And everyone's details are down in the description below, including Keith's and his Twitter page, where you can find links to land aid. So if you are feeling generous and you do want to help out, head over there and make a donation. Even as much as a few quid is enough to make a massive difference. So thank you all for coming along this evening, whether or not you're a guest, someone in the chat, or just popping by for a few minutes to drop a like on the video. Thank you very much. North London is red. Until next time, I'm JC, and we'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe and take care.